Welcome to the Growing Tall Poppies podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nat Green, and I'm so excited to have you join me as we discuss what it means to navigate your way through post-traumatic growth and not just survive, but to thrive after trauma. Through our podcast, we will explore ways for you to create a life filled with greater purpose, self-awareness, and a deep inner peace. Through integrating the many years of knowledge and professional experience, as well as the wisdom of those who have experienced trauma firsthand, we will combine psychology, accelerated approaches, coaching, and personal experience to assist you to learn, to grow, and to thrive. I hope to empower you to create deeper awareness and understanding and stronger connections with yourself and with others, whilst also paving the way for those who have experienced trauma and adversity to reduce their suffering and become the very best versions of themselves in order to thrive. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Hello, and welcome back to Growing Tall Poppies, the podcast where we explore the journey from trauma through to post-traumatic growth, embracing the possibilities of transformation along the way. I'm your host, Dr. Nat Green, and today we're diving into an important yet complex and often overlooked topic that's been gaining some attention in recent years, and that is the connection between trauma and invisible conditions like chronic pain and autoimmune disorders. Can trauma lead to invisible conditions like chronic pain or autoimmune diseases? Is there a connection between what we've experienced emotionally and how our bodies are responding physically? Let's explore. If you've ever wondered why chronic illnesses, particularly autoimmune conditions, seem to flare up after periods of emotional or physical stress, then you're definitely not alone. There's growing research, thankfully, that suggests a really powerful link between trauma, especially childhood trauma, and the development of these debilitating conditions later on in life. So in this episode, we'll look at how trauma can manifest physically, the science behind the mind-body connection, and how understanding this relationship truly is vital for our healing. Stay with me this week as we uncover the deeper layers of how trauma impacts both the body and the mind. Now, I want to acknowledge something before we begin. This is a sensitive topic, and it really may stir up some emotions. So if at any point you feel overwhelmed, remember to pause, take a deep breath, and reach out for support if you need it. Let's start by looking at trauma and the body. We've likely all heard the phrase, "the body keeps the score." It's also the title of an incredible book by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, which outlines how trauma leaves imprints on the body. But what does it actually mean? Today, we're going to dive into the mind-body connection and how unprocessed trauma can manifest physically in ways that we don't always expect. This episode is for anyone who's been wondering whether their chronic pain or autoimmune issues could potentially be linked to past traumatic experiences. So let's start with the basics. What is trauma? When we talk about trauma, we're not just referring to big life-changing events like major accidents, abuse, or natural disasters. Trauma can also stem from smaller, ongoing experiences like emotional neglect, bullying, or growing up in an unstable environment. It's about any experience that overwhelms our ability to cope, leaving a deep imprint on our minds and our bodies. Now, traditionally, we've known that trauma has serious effects on our mental health. We often think of trauma as something that happens in the past, something emotional, maybe even psychological or physical, that eventually gets left behind as you move clear of whatever it was that happened to you. But trauma is far more complex than that. In recent years, there's been a growing body of research that shows trauma's impact doesn't stop there. It goes far deeper. It can also profoundly affect our physical health. It has the potential to live on in our bodies, shaping our physical health in ways that we likely don't even realise. When someone experiences trauma, whether it's in childhood or adulthood, their entire nervous system is impacted. We've all heard of the fight, flight, or freeze response, right? That's our body's immediate reaction to danger, and we become hyper alert to the danger, and it's ingrained to keep us safe. This response is normal in the short term, and it's meant to protect us from immediate harm. But what happens when the trauma is ongoing, prolonged, or unresolved, or when it occurs at a vulnerable developmental stage, such as during childhood? The body remains on high alert even long after the threat has passed. And this state of chronic stress takes a toll on the body and can lead to a cascade of physiological responses. Elevated cortisol levels, increased adrenaline, suppressed immune function, and chronic inflammation. An overall disruption of the balance of our systems. And here's where the connection to invisible conditions begins to form. Two major areas that are being explored in this connection are chronic pain and autoimmune disorders. Now, these conditions are invisible in many ways, but debilitating nonetheless. Chronic pain is pain that lingers far beyond the normal expected healing time for an injury. Sometimes there isn't even a clear physical cause that doctors can point to. Autoimmune disorders, on the other hand, occur when our immune system, which is supposed to protect us, starts attacking our own tissues. This can include conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. They all fall into this category. But how might trauma be connected to these seemingly unrelated physical conditions? The answer lies in our nervous system and our stress response. When we experience trauma, especially early in life, it can dysregulate our nervous system. So just imagine it's like a super sensitive smoke detector that goes off even when there's no real fire. Our body remains in this hypervigilant state, always on alert, and that constant state of tension can lead to chronic health issues. So here's what can happen. Firstly, chronic inflammation. Our bodies naturally use inflammation to heal. But when trauma leaves us stuck in that state of chronic stress, inflammation can become a constant, damaging our tissues over time. Number 2, altered pain perception. Trauma can heighten our sensitivity to pain, leading to conditions like fibromyalgia or unexplained chronic pain. Number 3, immune system dysregulation. Trauma impacts our immune system, sometimes weakening it, other times triggering it to go into overdrive, which can set the stage for autoimmune diseases, and it can turn on itself. So let me just pause here and share some compelling information with you. There's numerous studies that have established a link between childhood trauma and autoimmune diseases. For example, a study published in the Journal of Psychosomatic Medicine found that individuals with a history of childhood abuse were more likely to develop autoimmune diseases in adulthood. Childhood traumatic stress significantly increases the chance of being hospitalised with an autoimmune disease later in adulthood. And this recent research documents how early life stress can lead to lasting inflammation and health issues later in life. It's also really important to note that not everyone who experiences trauma will develop chronic pain or an autoimmune disorder. There are so many factors involved, like genetics and environment, and these play a role too. But understanding this connection gives us new avenues to explore when it comes to health and healing. So it's absolutely fabulous that this research is now being done, because there's so many opportunities for us to learn from this and to look at how we can work on our own healing instead of having to just put up with the pain and the autoimmune conditions. So let's look at trauma and chronic pain. Chronic pain is often described as pain that persists for more than 3 to 6 months. What makes it different from acute pain, like the pain from a broken bone or a sprained ankle, is that it doesn't always have an obvious cause. This is where trauma comes in. There's growing evidence that unresolved emotional trauma can be a key driver behind chronic pain conditions. And here's why. Trauma can cause the nervous system to remain in a heightened state of alertness, even long after the traumatic event is over. This means that the body is constantly on guard, scanning for danger. And as a result, our muscles tense up, the inflammation builds, and pain signals can become overactive, even without any physical injury present. In fact, studies have shown that people who have experienced significant emotional trauma are more likely to develop chronic conditions like fibromyalgia, migraines, and irritable bowel syndrome. These conditions don't always show up on X-rays or lab tests, which can make them even more frustrating for you and difficult to diagnose. Now let's look at autoimmune disorders and trauma. Autoimmune diseases occur when the body's immune system mistakenly attacks its own tissues, causing inflammation and damage. Some of those most well-known autoimmune conditions, as I've already mentioned, include lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and multiple sclerosis. But what's the connection to trauma? Although the exact mechanisms aren't fully understood, research suggests that trauma may play a role in triggering autoimmune responses. For example, stress, especially long-term stress, chronic stress related to trauma, can cause immune dysregulation. This means that the immune system may become overactive or confused, leading it to attack our own healthy cells. It's believed that trauma-related stress and inflammation may damage the body's natural defense mechanisms, leading to the development of these autoimmune conditions. It's like the body is constantly trying to defend itself, even when there's no actual immediate threat. And this all brings us to the mind-body connection. It's super important to understand that our mental and physical health are deeply intertwined. Trauma isn't just an emotional experience, it impacts every part of our being. When the emotional effects of trauma are ignored or left unaddressed, they can begin to manifest in the body as chronic pain, autoimmune conditions, or other health issues. I can give you some really clear examples here using my own personal experience, if this helps you to make sense of this explanation. As you know, if you've listened to my initial podcast episodes, I underwent major ankle reconstruction surgery over 10 years ago, which didn't go so well. It resulted in really poor results structurally and a golden staph infection that became systemic and led to 4 surgeries in 8 months and prolonged hospital admissions throughout this time, and ultimately almost cost me my life. My entire system was significantly impacted, and my body began reacting to anything and everything. And I was diagnosed with my first autoimmune disorder, namely Hashimoto's thyroiditis, with no known family history of thyroid issues anywhere on either side of my family. Which, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, meant that it was likely as a result of excessive inflammation and complete confusion and sensitization of my nervous system, let alone the psychological impact on me, my health, my family, my job, and the need to make major adjustments to my lifestyle. Then came the chronic nerve pain with neuropathy and eventually complex regional pain syndrome. Whilst there are undoubtedly some key structural and physical components involved, there is also, without a doubt, considerable trauma that led to these conditions having developed. And in my own work with clients, I've seen time and time again how unresolved trauma shows up in the body. Whether it's persistent back pain, unexplained fatigue, or inflammatory symptoms, there's often a deeper emotional layer that really needs to be addressed. This is why it's absolutely crucial that we look beyond just the physical symptoms. While medical treatment is absolutely necessary, healing from chronic pain or autoimmune disorders also involves addressing the emotional and the psychological impact of trauma, if we can see an underlying link to these conditions. So how do we start healing these invisible wounds? First, we need to acknowledge the link between trauma and our body. It's okay to ask yourself whether your physical pain might be connected to something deeper. This absolutely does not mean that the pain isn't real. It absolutely is real. But understanding its root cause can help guide you toward more comprehensive healing. It reinforces the need for trauma-informed care. And this means acknowledging the impact trauma may have on someone's health when providing or accessing treatment. It could involve doctors taking a more holistic health history, incorporating mental health support, and offering care that doesn't re-traumatize the patient. Trauma-informed care recognises that sometimes healing physical conditions requires addressing emotional and psychological wounds as well. The idea that addressing underlying trauma could help treat chronic conditions is an exciting prospect. Traditional medical treatments are still crucial, of course, but integrating therapies focused on trauma could offer more complete healing. So let's take a moment here to reflect on something deeply important. If you're listening to this and recognizing your own experiences, I want you to know that none of this is your fault. I hope you heard that. And I really want you to really process that. None of this is your fault. Developing a chronic condition, whether it's autoimmune, chronic pain, or another invisible illness, is not a reflection of personal failure. The point of understanding these connections is not to place blame anywhere, but to open up new possibilities for healing and for growth. It's also important to remember that healing is possible. Our brains and bodies are incredibly adaptive. You've probably heard of a concept known as neuroplasticity. Even if we've lived with trauma or illness for years, we can still rewire our nervous system and promote health and resilience with the right support. Some of the most promising trauma-focused therapies include 1. Trauma-focused psychological therapy. This involves helping people reframe traumatic memories and develop healthier coping mechanisms using a variety of psychological approaches. Number 2, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, otherwise known as EMDR. This is a therapy that helps the brain reprocess trauma in a way that allows individuals to heal from the symptoms and the emotional distress. Thirdly, somatic experiencing. This approach focuses on releasing the tension and the stress stored in the body. And fourthly, mindfulness-based stress reduction. Meditation, breathing exercises, and body awareness can all help us regulate our nervous systems and promote healing. As you know also from some of my previous episodes, namely episode 16 and episode 22 with Emmeline Duncan, one powerful approach that I have found super helpful in navigating my path forward to post-traumatic growth is tension and trauma releasing exercises, or TRE. And this process helps release stored tension and trauma in the body and assists in nervous system regulation and in recalibration of our nervous systems. Another is somatic therapy, which focuses on how trauma affects the nervous system and works to release it through various body-centered practices. In addition to physical treatments, mindfulness and meditation can also help calm the nervous system and reduce the stress response that may be contributing to chronic pain or to autoimmune issues. Even simple things like journaling your emotions or practicing breath work can help you to reconnect with your body in a really gentle way. And as I always remind my clients, it's okay to ask for help. Working with a therapist who specializes in trauma can be transformative. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Another key aspect of healing is community and support. So whether it's from a therapist, a coach, a trauma-informed doctor, or a support group, surrounding yourself with people who understand your journey is absolutely vital in your recovery. So how can we start this healing process? Firstly, let's look for trauma-informed healthcare providers. If you're managing a chronic condition, ask your doctor about their approach to trauma. Do they consider it when diagnosing and treating their patients? How do they integrate mental health support? Don't be afraid to ask these questions. They're really important. Secondly, consider the trauma-focused therapies, especially if traditional treatments haven't provided the relief that you're seeking. These therapies aim to address the root cause rather than just treating the symptoms. And thirdly, take small steps towards better health. Whether it's gentle exercise, improving your sleep, practicing mindfulness, or incorporating some basic stress reduction techniques. These lifestyle changes can make a huge difference in managing both trauma and chronic health conditions. So what are some practical steps you can take if you're dealing with trauma-related chronic pain or an autoimmune condition? Firstly, and probably most important, listen to your body. trauma survivors often become disconnected from their bodies as a coping mechanism. So learning to reconnect is really important. This can be done through mindfulness, yoga, or gentle movement. And this can help you better understand and manage your symptoms. Secondly, practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. I know it's so easy to feel frustrated when your body is not cooperating. But remember that your symptoms are not indicative of a failure. They are your body's way of telling you that something needs attention. Thirdly, consider trauma-informed therapy. I've already mentioned the type of therapies that can make a big difference. Therapies like EMDR or somatic experiencing can help you process unresolved trauma, which may lead to a reduction in your physical symptoms. Fourthly, seek out support, whether it's through therapy, support groups, or online communities. Find others who understand what you're going through, who get it. You don't have to do this alone. And fifthly, are the mind-body approaches. Practices like meditation, breathwork, and TRE can really help you regulate your own nervous system and lower your stress response, potentially reducing inflammation and pain. So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with some key points. The mind-body connection is real. Our past experiences, especially trauma, can have long-lasting effects on our physical health. It's crucial to consider our emotional and physical selves when we seek treatment. If you're dealing with chronic pain or an autoimmune condition, consider whether trauma may be playing a role. This does not mean your symptoms aren't real. They absolutely are. It just means understanding that trauma could be contributing to your health challenges. Healing is a journey that requires addressing both the physical and the emotional aspects of health. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate the small victories because progress is progress. And if you're struggling, don't hesitate to reach out, whether to a healthcare provider, therapist, or trusted friend. Connect with us in this community. You do not have to walk this path alone. So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with a reminder. If you're living with chronic pain or an autoimmune condition, and if you suspect that trauma may be playing a role, it's never too late to begin your healing journey. Trauma is complex, and so is the healing process. But with the right support, you can begin to release the pain that's been holding you back all this time. Remember, your body is doing the best it can with the information it has available to it. So by nurturing both your physical and emotional health, you can start to find relief and move toward a life of post-traumatic growth. Thank you for joining me today on Growing Tall Poppies. Before I sign off, I just wanted to end the episode with a reminder to please vote for Growing Tall Poppies in the Best Psychology Podcast category for the International Women in Podcasting Awards. I'm super grateful and so blown away at the support I've received so far already, the amazing messages about this achievement, for even being nominated in such a prestigious award. I would be honored to have your vote in the Best Psychology Podcast category. Your support honestly means the world to me, and it helps this podcast reach more people who need it. So thank you so much. Link is in the show notes. We've got 2 more weeks left for voting, so please share widely, cast your vote and share it with your friends. Let's show that Australian podcasters can really rise up and make a difference. Thanks so much. If you found this episode helpful, I encourage you to share it with someone who might benefit from understanding the connection between trauma and invisible conditions. Until next time, take care of yourself and of others, and remember, healing is possible. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Growing Tall Poppies. It is my deepest hope that today's episode may have inspired and empowered you to step fully into your post-traumatic growth so that you can have absolute clarity around who you are, what matters the most to you, and to assist you to release your negative emotions and regulate your nervous system so you can fully thrive. New episodes are published every Tuesday, and I hope you'll continue to join us as we explore both the strategies and the personal qualities required to fully live a life of post-traumatic growth and to thrive. So if it feels aligned to you and really resonates, then I invite you to hit subscribe, and it would mean the world to us if you could share this episode with others who you feel may benefit too. You may also find me on Instagram at Growing Tall Poppies and Facebook, Dr. Natalie Green. Remember, every moment is an opportunity to look for the lessons and to learn and increase your ability to live the life you desire and deserve. So for now, stay connected, stay inspired, stand tall like the tall poppy you are, and keep shining your light brightly in the world. Bye for now.